One afternoon in November 1985, a man named Dick Eaton wandered through the woods near Bear Brook State Park in Allenstown, New Hampshire, looking for firewood, a wooded area where locals camped and hunted. The early winter air was cold and still. No birds chirped. No wind blew. But Dick smelled something off, like rotting flesh, like burning rubber, like the kind of thing that instinctively makes you recoil. The strange thing was that there were no animal carcasses around. There was just one thing. An old, rusty steel barrel, hidden under a layer of dry leaves. As if someone had deliberately hidden it, he gave it a gentle kick. Something rattled inside, then he lifted the lid. And everything in the world changed forever. Inside the barrel were the remains of two bodies, a woman and a young girl. Both were badly decomposed, only their clothes and bones remaining, wrapped in plastic bags like household trash. The woman was about 5 feet 6 inches tall, and showed signs of having given birth multiple times. The girl was about 9 to 11 years old. Both had severe head trauma, likely caused by being hit with a heavy object. The police called it the worst discovery day in Allenstown's history. They cordoned off the woods, combed the entire Bear Brook area for days afterward, but nothing more was found. No blood. No murder weapon. No identity. No photos to look for. No missing person matching the description. They called the two victims Jane Doe 1 and Child Doe 1, two names for people with no real names, no whereabouts, and no one to claim them. The years passed. The police handed out flyers, checked the statewide missing persons database. Nothing matched. The investigators of that day gradually retired, the files were put away in storage, and only a few remained in their hearts. "It can't be," said one officer. "It's impossible that a woman and a little girl could disappear into the open without anyone noticing." But then, the forest fell silent again, and somewhere, the person who put their bodies in the steel drum was still living freely. On May 9, 2000, 15 years after the first discovery, a road worker turned up at Bear Brook to check out the abandoned land. There was no specific reason. It was just that the map said sewer needs to be checked. But this time, they found another steel drum, just 100 meters from the first discovery. When they opened it, the horror returned, not just one, but two other little girls, badly decomposed bodies, carefully wrapped in plastic bags, electrical cords, and a few old blankets. All died of severe head trauma. The police stood dumbfounded. It was the same man. It was the same crime. And now 4 victims, DNA analysis revealed. The first woman was the biological mother of 2 of the 3 girls. The other child was not related to the mother. None matched any missing persons records. In other words, this was a family, possibly a biological mother, biological child, and stepchild, murdered together, left in the woods, and then forgotten as if they had never existed. The police called them Bear Brook Victim 1, adult female, Bear Brook Victim 2, child 1, Bear Brook Victim 3, child 2. Bear Brook Victim 4, child 3, no photos. No school records. No dental records, no one reported them missing, no one looked for them for decades. That was the most chilling thing to some investigators. How could a woman and 3 girls be murdered, dumped in the woods, and no one remember them? No parents. No neighbors. No teachers. How did they live before they died? That question, along with the skeletons, would haunt Allenstown for years to come. In 2003, California police arrested a man named Curtis Kimball, accused of abandoning his adopted daughter, a girl named Lisa, after a car accident. A DNA test revealed Lisa was not Curtis's biological child. No one knew who she was. and Curtis was one of Terry Rasmussen's many false identities. Lisa was 5 when she was found. She said, "My father told my mother to leave. I never saw her again." Terry Rasmussen was later convicted of other crimes and died in prison in 2010. But thanks to DNA genealogy, his profile was eventually linked to the Bear Brook case. It was he who had lived with the victim's mother, taken her child and another girl to New Hampshire, and then, all of them, disappeared. There was no doubt Rasmussen had killed the family, then pretended to be the father of the surviving child, to continue his life of bloodshed. But why did he do it? Who else did he kill? What are the true identities of the other victims? No one knows who they are, but their silence screams the loudest. Nestled in the foothills of the White Mountains, Allenstown is a town where people still forget to lock their doors at night. Where small cafes still have chalkboards, kids still ride bikes on the sidewalks, and the only bad news is often a stray dog. Bear Brook State Park, a wooded area just outside town, is a popular camping spot for local families. No one expected that this was the unmarked grave of 4 abandoned people. After decades of anonymity, in 2017 to 2019, thanks to genealogy DNA technology, analyzing bloodlines through genetic data, investigators finally found 3 of the 4 victims. The adult woman's real name is Marlise Elizabeth Honeychurch, born in 1954 in Connecticut. The first girl, found in the same box as Marlise, is her biological daughter, Marie Vaughn, born in 1971. The third girl, found in the second box, is Sarah McWatters, born in 1977, also Marlise's biological daughter. The 3 were identified as mother and 2 daughters, missing since Thanksgiving 1978, after Marlise had an argument with her mother and left home with a man named Bob Evans, who, we later learned, was Terry Rasmussen. The fourth girl, aged 2 to 4 when she was murdered, was not related to Marlise or her 2 daughters. DNA showed she was Rasmussen's biological child, but the identity of her mother remained a mystery. She was forever known as Jane Doe, or Bear Brook Child Unknown. No photos. No birth certificate. No medical records. No one ever looked for her. She was the perfect victim for someone who knew how to cover his tracks, an investigative journalist observed. She was a child born in darkness, living with a fake, and dying in the woods as if she had never existed. But she was the key to bringing him to light. Marlise had been a beautiful young woman, with curly brown hair, piercing eyes, and a personality described as not easily submissive. She left home in her 20s, taking her young child with her, and had been in love many times. Why did she go with Rasmussen? Why did she let her children go with a man the whole family suspected? Relatives say she broke off contact after an argument on Thanksgiving 1978. After that, no one heard from her again. For years, the family thought she had run away, hidden away out of shame, or moved to another state. No one could have imagined she would be murdered just weeks later, along with her 2 young children, Bob Evans, Gordon Jensen, Curtis Kimball, Larry Vanner, Terry Rasmussen. All of them were the same person. A man who lived under false identities, tricking single women, gaining control, and then gradually erasing all traces of them. Rasmussen had been an electrician, a handyman, and a nice guy to the neighbors. He had a gentle smile, a soft voice, and an ability to disappear after killing. Marlise was not the first victim. And Lisa, the rescued child, was not the only child he had adopted and abandoned. He was a living ghost, a parasite that lived off the trust and vulnerability of others. Amid all the forensic information, DNA reports, and crime scene maps, there is one thing that no one knows, and cannot reconstruct: How did the three of them live their final days? Did they think they were going to be killed? Did Sarah, 1, cry in the cold woods at night? Did Marlies, at one point, try to escape, but couldn't? No one can answer. Only their bodies, piled on top of each other in a metal box, tell a story in a bloody silence. For years, Marlies, Marie, and Sarah were buried in Manchester's city cemetery, with a headstone that read, "Nameless. Known only to God." That's how a nation deals with its nameless dead: bury them under a rock, and pray. But now that they know their names, the real question isn't who killed them. The question is, why did it take more than 30 years for anyone to ask about them? After the victims' identities were released, Allenstown held an official memorial service, attended by relatives, former investigators, and many others who had worked on the case. A small memorial was erected next to Bear Brook Park, engraved with the names of the mother and her children, and the words, "They were never forgotten, even when we didn't know their names." But there was still one blank: the name of the fourth girl, the child born to a demon, and who died in silence. In 2003, in California, a man named Curtis Kimball was arrested for drunk driving and leaving his young daughter in a dangerous situation. The police were suspicious. This man was not the biological father of the child. They did a DNA test. The result: the child, named Lisa, had no blood relation to Kimball. Lisa, then 5 years old, had no memory of her mother, except for a few blurry images. Mom had dark hair, a soft voice, and always hugged me when it was cold. The police found no missing person records that matched. No mother's name. No one reported the disappearance, and the man, Curtis, had no clear identity either. Working backwards from the fingerprints, the police discovered Curtis Kimball had lived in Idaho under the name Gordon Jensen, and before that, Larry Vanner in California. In each place, he used a different identity. In each place, he had a new lover, and each of those women disappeared without a trace. In old New Hampshire state records, Bob Evans was listed as the boyfriend of Marlies Honeychurch, the woman murdered in Bear Brook. At this point, the FBI began to suspect all these names could be the same person. Over the years, the police used a new technique, DNA genealogy, that is, analyzing DNA and comparing it with bloodline data from users of genealogy services, Ancestry, 23andMe. The breakthrough came when they found distant relatives of Lisa in Wisconsin. From there, they built a family tree and discovered that Lisa's mother was Eunsoon Jun, a Korean woman who had been missing since the early 2000s in California. Reinvestigating Eunsoon's case, they found the prime suspect, Larry Vanner, who lived with her. When they excavated his house, Eunsoon's body was found buried in the basement. And Larry Vanner was Curtis Kimball, and Bob Evans, and Terry Petter Rasmussen. Terry Petter Rasmussen was born in 1943 in Colorado. Raised in a seemingly normal family, he dropped out of high school, joined the army, and then wandered across the United States. He was married, had 4 children, all of whom he cut off due to abuse. After the divorce, he began living under false identities, using death records or forged documents to survive. For 20 years, Rasmussen moved between states: Arizona, California, Texas, Idaho, New Hampshire, and Virginia. In each place, he created a new identity, approached a single woman with a small child, and then gradually disappeared. The scary thing is, most of Rasmussen's victims were never reported missing. Why? They were single women, or had lost contact with their families. They had young children, lived in seclusion, or moved around a lot. He chose the most forgotten. Rasmussen was a devil born from the cracks in the system, said an FBI agent. He didn't need to hide. He just picked the right people, the ones no one was looking for. Lisa, the child Rasmussen abandoned, is now an adult. She is the only surviving witness, the one who lived with him in the woods. I remember my dad wouldn't let me go to school. I couldn't talk to anyone. Every time he asked about my mom, he said, "She's gone, she's not coming back." I think I got used to it. But I always felt like something was wrong. One day, he left me in the car and drove away. Lisa's account is not only evidence, but also a warning. There are children who live next to monsters. And they think it's normal. Because no one has taught them what's abnormal. After identifying Rasmussen, the FBI reopened dozens of unsolved missing persons cases. The results: he was linked to disappearances in New Hampshire, California, Texas, and Arizona. Several victims were never identified, listed as Jane Doe in multiple states. The total number of victims is estimated to be at least 5, but possibly more, and a shocking truth: Lisa could have been the next victim. If Rasmussen had not been arrested in California in 2003, there had been no car accident, no DNA testing. Lisa could have been the 5th body in Bear Brook, or he would have taken her to another state, changed her name, and continued the cycle, pretending to be the father, winning over the mother, killing, disappearing. Lisa's survival was more than a miracle. It was the only piece of the puzzle that led to a man the justice system had almost forgotten. He's dead. But what he left behind lives on in the minds of a nation. Terry Rasmussen died in prison in December 2010, of illness. He was never tried for the crimes at Bear Brook. Never met the victims' families, never confessed, and never been charged with the murders of Marlise Honeychurch, Marie, Sarah, or the 4th girl. No trial. No sentence. No chance to look him in the eye, sighed a retired investigator. He took the truth to his grave. And those who survived struggled with it for the rest of their lives. After their identities were confirmed, the bodies of Marlise Honeychurch and her 2 daughters, Marie and Sarah, were moved and reburied in their California home, according to their wishes. The new graves bore their names, dates of birth, and estimated dates of death. They were no longer anonymous in the forensic system, but next to them there was still a small, unmarked headstone, engraved with the words, "Bear Brook victim, unknown girl, forever remembered." The 4th girl, Rasmussen's biological child, has yet to be identified. No one knows who her mother is. No birth records. No photos. No one is looking for her. The silence is what makes the pain scream. Lisa, the survivor, grew up in a foster home after Rasmussen was arrested. She went to college, has a steady job. But the memories of her childhood remain like scars that cannot be touched. She once said in an interview, "I survived, but I carry with me all the things they can't tell. I can speak for Marlise, for Marie, for Sarah. And for the girl whose name I don't know." Lisa doesn't want to be called a victim. She chooses a different title, the one who remembers the forgotten. Without DNA genealogy, Rasmussen would have remained a name in the system. Thanks to technology that connects DNA with the profiles of millions of people on genealogy platforms, police have been able to find relatives, build family trees, and identify each victim. The technology has since been used to solve many other high-profile cases, including the Golden State Killer in 2018. Bear Brook was the first case to show that DNA technology could solve a cold case that had been cold for decades, said one expert. It changed the way we look at the past forever. Terry Rasmussen, a man who lived by a lie, left a legacy of obsession. He proved that a person could hide perfectly by choosing the right victims, those no one was looking for. He forced the entire U.S. justice system to rethink how it records, searches, and investigates missing persons cases. He left behind children who survived, but grew up with memories of hell, and then the thing worse than death, oblivion, he almost achieved. Although Rasmussen is dead, investigators believe there are many more victims who have never been found. He lived in at least 6 different states. There were many women who lived with him, then disappeared. No papers, no records. There are at least 3 unidentified women in cases he was involved in. One journalist commented, "Bear Brook is just the tip of the iceberg. The rest is a graveyard deep beneath the surface of the lake, and their names will never be engraved if we don't keep looking." Today, at Bear Brook State Park, there is a small memorial. Not big. Not flashy. Just a stone engraved with the words, "They were loved. They were real. And they were found." But for many, the woods are no longer a place to camp. It is a reminder, the darkness is not in the woods, it is in people's hearts. Do you have time to see the signs? Are you sure you would notice when someone quietly disappears from your life? An abused mother leaves home, no one calls back. A child stops going to school, no one reports it. A man goes by 5 names, no one suspects. If that were your child, would you have time to save him?